February 4th, 1977, Broadhaven, a quiet seaside village on the Welsh coast. At around 1 p.m., the bell rang at Broadhaven Primary School. But what happened next would shatter any sense of ordinary routine. During their lunch break, a group of 11 school children, all between the ages of 9 and 11, raced toward the headmaster's office. Their faces were pale, some were crying, others spoke over each other in frightened bursts. But one detail rang out, again and again. They had seen a UFO, not just lights in the sky. They described a metallic, cigar-shaped craft hovering silently in the field just beyond the school. And next to it, a figure, tall, slender, clad in silver. The headmaster, Alan John, was skeptical. He thought it was a prank. But when he asked the children, individually and without the chance to compare stories, their drawings matched. That moment marked the beginning of something far bigger than a single sighting. In the weeks that followed, the skies above this peaceful Welsh village would become the focus of military interest, media frenzy, and decades of debate. And as the mystery deepened, Broadhaven would become known by a chilling new name: the Broadhaven Triangle. To understand how an elementary school encounter became one of Britain's most enduring UFO cases, we need to go back to the very moment the normal world cracked open. Before the headlines, before the military vans rolled into view, Broadhaven was just a quiet dot on the Pembrokeshire coast. Windswept, slow-moving. The kind of place where you always waved to your neighbors, and the biggest mystery was whether the weather would let the rugby match go ahead. Tucked between grazing pastures and rocky shorelines, the village's life revolved around routine. Children at Broadhaven Primary played football in the field behind the school, while farmers tended to their flocks under skies so familiar, most hardly looked up. Among the students was 10-year-old David Davies, quiet, observant, and known for his thoughtful nature. He wasn't the type to make up stories. Neither were his classmates. Ordinary kids who loved comic books, fish and chips, and sneaking an extra biscuit during lunch. Their teachers, too, were the no-nonsense sort. Firm believers in education, discipline, and chalk dust. Meanwhile, nearby in Little Haven and the surrounding countryside, local hotel owner Rosa Granville ran her business with care. Well-respected, warm, and grounded, Rosa had served guests from all over Britain. Her hotel stood just a few fields away from where something astonishing would later appear. And yet, in the weeks leading up to it all, strange murmurs began to ripple through the community. A few locals mentioned odd flickers in the sky, soft humming sounds in the dead of night, and farm animals acting skittish for no clear reason. Most brushed it off, just wind, imagination, or tricks of light over the sea. But those small signs, the ones no one could quite explain, were about to converge on a single afternoon behind a village schoolyard. And when they did, Broadhaven would step into history as the heart of one of Britain's most persistent and perplexing UFO mysteries. Lunchtime had just begun. The schoolyard at Broadhaven Primary echoed with shouts and laughter, the kind of carefree noise that only children can make. But then, something shifted. Several students noticed a strange shimmer beyond the school fence. Not a plane, not a balloon. Hovering near the edge of the field stood an object, long, metallic, and unlike anything they'd seen before. One boy described it as cigar-shaped, with a dome on top and landing legs beneath. It wasn't moving, but it wasn't sitting still either. It seemed to hover, silent and unnatural, as though suspended by something invisible. Then came the figure, a tall being in a silver suit, standing beside the object, motionless. No face was clearly visible. Its proportions were off, unnervingly tall, with an oddly shaped head and long limbs. One student later recalled, it was just standing there, looking at us, or maybe through us. Terrified but curious, a few of the boys crept closer toward the fence. But as they approached, the being slid behind the craft, disappearing from view. Moments later, the entire object vanished, either silently lifting into the sky or disappearing altogether. Accounts vary, but none describe a normal departure. Inside the school, The commotion that followed was immediate. The children ran to their teacher, then to the headmaster, insisting they had seen something real. Skeptical, Headmaster Alan John asked each child to draw what they saw, separately, without collaboration. The results were chilling. The drawings matched. Each showed a similar silver object, landed in the same spot, with a tall humanoid figure nearby. These were not wild doodles. They were confident, deliberate depictions of something specific, something they couldn't have made up together, not in those circumstances. But it didn't end there. In the days that followed, more witnesses emerged. Local hotelier Rosa Granville, known for her level-headedness, reported seeing a blazing light outside her window late one night. When she looked out, she saw a craft on the ground, glowing, generating intense heat, and two figures moving nearby. Her dogs barked violently, then cowered. The next day, she found the grass in that spot scorched and flattened. Other locals described weird electrical interference, animals behaving erratically, and an eerie sense of being watched. One farmer claimed his tractor's engine cut out near the same field. Another mentioned military personnel quietly visiting the area days after the sightings, though no official explanation was offered. As quickly as it had started, the wave of sightings seemed to quiet. But the questions only grew. What exactly did those children see? Who or what was that figure beside the craft? And why did so many credible witnesses share eerily consistent details? Broadhaven's ordinary life had been torn open by something extraordinary. But this was only the beginning. Next, the investigations, the Ministry of Defense, and the unsettling inconsistencies that still haunt this case nearly 5 decades later. News of the children's sightings spread quickly through the region, and the reaction was mixed. Some teachers dismissed the event as childish imagination. Others were more cautious, unsettled by the kids' consistency. The local press picked up the story, and soon reporters arrived from London, eager to speak with the young witnesses. What they heard surprised them. Not one of the students changed their account. When pressed separately, the details remained the same. The shape of the craft, the being's appearance, the way it moved, calm, measured, and impossibly silent. Authorities couldn't ignore it for long. Officials from the Ministry of Defense visited the site, quietly and without much explanation. An RAF officer interviewed staff at the school. The official line? That nothing of concern had been detected on radar. Case closed. But that didn't stop investigators from returning, sometimes in uniform, other times in plain clothes. There was also physical evidence, though it never made headlines. Rosa Granville, the hotel owner, reported scorch marks in the field near where she claimed the craft had landed. Grass had been charred and pressed flat, and a strange residue remained on some stones. Photographs were reportedly taken, though few have surfaced publicly. Despite these details, contradictions began to emerge. Some neighbors accused the children of inventing the story to avoid schoolwork, though their fear seemed genuine. Others speculated they'd been influenced by a science fiction comic popular at the time. But none could explain how multiple kids described the same being without comparing notes. The hotel owner Rosa remained adamant until her death that what she saw was real. "I know what I saw," she told a reporter years later, "and I wish I hadn't." As with most UFO cases, theories soon piled up. Extraterrestrial visitors, drawn to a rural, isolated spot. Military testing, with some suggesting the figure was a human in an experimental suit. Mass hysteria, triggered by a mix of suggestion, anxiety, and group psychology. Or simply, a hoax. Ufologists pointed to the consistency and composure of the child witnesses, citing Broadhaven as a textbook mass sighting. Skeptics noted the lack of high-quality photos, radar confirmation, or physical remains. Still, no theory has ever explained away the depth of detail in the testimonies, or why the ministry kept returning. Psychologist Dr. Keith Hearn, who studied cases like Broadhaven in the late 1970s, once remarked, "These aren't delusions, they're memories. Whether the source was external or internal, that remains the real question." Nearly 50 years later, there's still no definitive answer. Just a windswept school field, a cluster of nearly identical drawings, and a lingering sense that something visited and left without a trace. How Broadhaven shaped modern British UFO discourse, and what remains hidden in official archives. Even now, the mystery of Broadhaven remains unresolved. A craft no one could identify, a figure no one could explain. Drawings that still match, nearly 50 years later. No conclusive evidence ever surfaced. No confession, no technology recovered, no firm answer. And yet, for those who were there, the memory remains vivid, undiminished by time. Some of the schoolchildren grew up to lead ordinary lives. Others still speak about what they saw with calm certainty, as if recounting a moment too strange to forget, but too real to deny. Rosa Granville remained unshaken in her story until the end of her life. And in the fields beyond that quiet seaside school, something left a mark. Not just burned grass or whispered rumors, but a wound in reality that never quite healed. So what happened in Broadhaven? Was it an extraterrestrial encounter? A government test? Or a moment when imagination and fear fused into something unforgettable? Perhaps we'll never know. Perhaps the truth is still buried somewhere in sealed files or fading memories. But maybe, just maybe, the real mystery isn't the craft itself. It's why some sightings never fade. So, what do you believe happened that day behind the schoolyard fence? Let me know your thoughts below. And as always, stay curious. Was the Broadhaven encounter truly a brush with something beyond this world, or a moment of misperception that grew into legend? Share your theory in the comments below.